today is, this afternoon actually, is December the 22nd, 2008. And we're at the home of Mr. and Mrs. Robert Bishop. And my name is Ivan Blau. And this is my grandson, Nick.
Hi, Nick.
I'll be doing the interview with you, talking with you, and Nick will be running the camera. Okay? And any time that Nick thinks of something that he wants to ask, why, Nick, you just chime right in and
Sounds good.
and be part of our conversation. Because this is just going to be a conversation like we had the other day.
Nice.
Okay. And we'll just visit, and that's how we'll get the story out. All right? Now, this is actually it's a history of Bob's time in the service of the United States Navy. But it is also because it's you're going to be accompanied by your wife, Charlotte, and I think that's about 65 years.
Yes.
Is that right? How
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah.
That's been a long time. And so we'll be talking some about your family history too, as well. And so now I also want you to know that this is an interview that's sponsored by the Lowell Area Historical Museum. And a permanent copy of this will be on file at the museum. And there will also be a copy in a loan file or a library at the museum that people can come in and take a copy out for research. Kids like to do that for school and so on. And Nick, being a history teacher, he assigns a lot of his kids to look up a lot of these things,
Okay.
so about the different wars and so on. And also a copy will be sent to the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. It'll be on file there with a lot of other military oral histories. They probably will take parts of our interview and put it in there. So, just want you to know where it's all going to end up and what it's all worth. So, I think to start our interview, and what we'll do is start out a little bit with asking you some things, Bob, about your ancestors. And we'll talk about, excuse me, you tell me a little bit about where your ancestors came from and maybe your grandpa's name and so on, okay?
Okay. My mother's side of the family came over from Germany. She was the only one that was born here in the United States. The rest of them, there was about 5 boys and a girl in the family, and they came from Baden, the Black Forest region of Germany, and settled down in Chillicothe, Ohio, back up in some hardscrabble land that this was all that they had or could afford at that time. And when my mother got to be about 18 years old, why, she came up with a cousin of her mother at the Margraf up into Akron, Ohio, and that's where she met my dad.
Okay.
Now, my dad's side of the family was his dad, my grandfather, came from over in Pennsylvania and settled in Akron because of the booming industry of the rubber tires being made there.
And what was his name?
His name was Joseph, and my mother's name, or my grandmother's name, was Levina. She was from down at Manchester, Ohio. a little town south of Akron there.
Mhm.
And we, my father was the oldest of the family, and he was kind of a jack of all trades. He was a electrician, mechanic, machinist, the whole bit.
What was his name?
And his name was Ira Milton.
That was the same as my dad's name.
Oh, okay.
My dad's name was
And,
that.
So he traveled around a bit for the International Harvester Company as a reaper repairer out through the Midwest, but my mother was working in the factories in Akron, and one place was the International Harvester, and as far as I know, that's where they met.
They met, okay. And her name was?
Her name was Magdalene, but she went by the name of Lena all her life, in fact. And we lived up in North Akron, Ohio, on North Hill, and they were married in 1910, and the oldest of my brothers came along in 1916. I was born in 1918, and my younger brother was 1920, and he was only 2 weeks old when my father died of the flu epidemic.
Oh, that's right. The big flu epidemic that swept the United States.
And so we had to go it alone from then on, and it was like I told Ivan that the greatest thing that happened to us was the Depression came along and brought everybody down to our level of living. We
didn't even know you were poor, did you?
No, we didn't. And of course, in those days, where eggs were a penny apiece, and the best steaks were 30 cents a pound. So.
Well, you had your own home.
And we had our own home. My dad he had taken a loan out of $1,000 to build a house.
I see.
And he did some of the work himself. The electrician, all the electrical part of it, and so on. So they had it paid off when I think when we were born.
Oh, that early.
Yeah. So, but in those days, she couldn't own the house. She had my uncle on the bishop side there be a guardian for us.
Oh, okay, because she was raising
And
now three.
we owned the house,
Yeah, and that's
the 3 boys.
Oh,
We didn't know that until we went to sell it, but it was in our names.
I see.
So
So that must have been pretty hard going there for Mom. And your mother's name was Magdalena, is that right? And
Lena by
Lena, they called her.
Yeah.
But her last name was what, Easterly, was that right?
Esterly.
Esterly.
Esterly, yeah.
That was her maiden name.
Yeah.
And so you guys then were, as you grew up, you had to do a lot of help around the house, I imagine. Tell us how that kind of all went.
Oh, well, yeah, you had to, in the summertime, you had to scrub the porch and the banister and everything, and we had some chickens up until about 1933 when someone on a dark night absconded with them.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Stole your chickens.
We accused her on the garbage man that picked up the garbage, but we couldn't prove it. And but my mother, being from the country, she wouldn't buy store-bought egg.
I see.
She had to have the fresh eggs.
Uh-huh. Now, she was alone doing for all you boys, and so you all had to ship in and do those jobs and so on,
Yeah.
find work,
Yeah.
did you? Or
Yeah.
how did you do that to make ends meet?
Well,
She
one,
was
we had a garden
Okay.
in there, and so we ate off of that during the summer and canned, and we had a couple of sour cherries that provided the fruit for the winter, pies and stuff, and
She did washings.
and then she took in. Well, we had rumors.
Okay.
When we were little, we had a Davenport that was catty corner across the living room,
Right.
and my brother and I climbed over and slept out behind the Davenport,
Okay.
and my younger brother, he slept with my mother because it was one you could open up and make a bed out of it.
Okay. Yeah.
It was a leather type of a sofa, and so it was quite a while before we finally got to move upstairs into a bedroom,
I see.
and all three of us slept in one bed.
Mm-hmm.
So we kept it. My younger brother, he was about 2 or 3 inches taller than the other of us, and we said, well, he was squeezed in between the two fellows in bed. So yes, we.
So then, how about your education then? How did you go to school, or where did you go?
Well, we went to. We had a good school, and the principal lived just down the street, and he was strict.
Oh, okay.
Oh yes, he didn't have the red hair for nothing, and I ran a real tough ship there and he had the principal of the grade school and the high school.
Oh, both.
Both,
I see.
yes. And in fact, for a while, the grade school was in the back part of the school, and the high school in the front part.
I see.
And until they got enough money to build a new high school up away from up the road a little. And
About how many people were in a class?
we had January and June graduations.
Oh,
So in my class in January, which was usually the smaller class, it was about 98
Oh, that
kids.
big.
Yeah. And then there was about 150 in the June class.
So you really went to see quite a city, pretty good sized school, really, compared to what I'm used to.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I'm used to
yes.
a country school where there was 18 kids for
Yeah.
the first 8 grades.
Yes, yes. Well, that was where we lived in Wadsworth.
Okay.
They had that kind of school.
Uh-huh. So anyway, you went to grade school there, and that was right through the Depression. And you told me something about your father had been a odd fellow.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah, and we get a basket of groceries every Christmas
From the odd
Yeah.
fellows.
yeah,
My father was an odd fellow also, and that's why I had to remember that.
yeah.
Even
yeah. Oh,
you
yeah.
brought it up. I
came
don't
in
know
handy.
many
And-
people know that
And
anymore.
then my uncles down in south of Columbus, Ohio, they were farmers,
Okay.
and they would send us up a box of pork when they butchered
Okay.
the hams and some ribs and
Sure.
so forth, and the pigtail.
And the pigtail, yeah.
Yes.
Mother always liked the tongue.
Yeah.
Yeah, always cooked the tongue.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
Uh-huh.
corn hogs.
When we okay. There comes the German again.
That's mush.
Yeah.
A type of mush they make with, I think, the brain, don't they?
Oh, I don't know about
Corn
that. We
hogs,
didn't get into that, but anyways, so you got through a pretty good grade school, and then you went right on into about 1936. You graduated from Akron.
From North High, yes, in Akron.
Right.
And
Did you have a chance to do any athletics or anything like that? Or did you have
no,
time?
for one thing, my oldest brother was maybe a little stockier than I was, and the coach wanted him to, and he had real good brains to go with it, and he wanted him to come out for football.
Okay.
But my mother wouldn't let him. She wouldn't sign the papers.
Oh, okay.
And so I never. I was too I was kind of too little for that kind of activity. Although we won the state championship in 1935 with the football team that had 2 130-pound guards.
Okay.
And
Yeah, a little different.
and they were the messenger boy, and they would shuttle in and out
Uh-huh.
the tunnel.
Right.
Okay, then after what got graduating from high school, you in about 1936 you went
Yeah.
on to college.
Yeah, well, not right away. I worked in a gas station for a couple of years.
Okay,
Uh,
that was not unusual in those days, was
yes,
it?
right, not too far from us over on Main Street. There, fella had bought or had bought into a service station, a golf service station, and he was looking for 3 fellows to help him run it, and I got to be one of them, and that's where I learned to drive, because I couldn't drive up to that point, but so I had to move all the cars around the service station until I was able to go out in the street and drive.
Okay.
And I didn't have to have a driver's license in those days.
Oh yeah. You were about 14 apparently about then, so
Well, no, I was 18.
18.
Yeah.
By the time you graduated.
After I graduated,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
But it didn't take me long.
So then in 42, you went to the university.
Yeah, I graduated from Akron U
And what kind of a degree or what did you?
with a Bachelor of Mechanical Engineering. And it was a five-year course where in the junior year you worked 9 weeks and went to school 9 weeks as for the classes and working somewhere in engineering at some company that would hire you.
I see. Well, that was really very practical education.
Yeah, yes, I got mine, my co-op with Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company, and I worked in all the maintenance forces, the little machine shop area, the whole bit. A welding shop, which was on the night shift with my uncle, who was a blacksmith, like his grandfather, his father was, my grandfather.
Okay. Now you see that's just for time, kind of a timeline here. And just before you graduated in 41 was Pearl Harbor. Was
Yeah.
in December
Yeah.
of 41. And how did that kind of strike you? Did that have an effect on your?
Well, only in that they had the draft that it was going, and I got a 2B deferment because of I was working in the Goodyear, which was making all kinds of products for the armed forces.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was working in various parts of, like I said, the different areas of Goodyear's engineering or maintenance forces. And so I wasn't drafted until 1943, September of 1943.
Okay. Yeah. Now you had a couple deferments there.
Yeah,
Because
well,
you were working in the.
Yeah, it was one deferment, and somehow they forgot me.
Oh, you got
And-
skipped over a little bit.
Like I told you, though, I went down with two fellows that was in Akron to recruit people that had mechanical skills,
Mm-hmm.
and their job was to have been going behind the lines and evaluating what needed to be done by equipment, whether you scrapped it or repaired it or whatever that was.
Yeah.
He advised me to keep on my schooling, and I thought about it, and I did. I only had about one semester to go at that time.
So when you were about 24 years old then when you were drafted.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
And tell me about how the draft procedure worked. You got a notice in the mail, did you? Or?
Oh yeah. I got a notice in the mail saying that I had to go down to the armory in Akron and for a physical. So on a certain date, and so I went down, went through the physicals, and I came back home, And in those days, the local post office on North Hill had 2 deliveries during the day. And in the afternoon delivery was a notice that said, if you are you have passed the physical and you are to come for up to Cleveland and go through a physical there for induction into the service.
Didn't waste any time when they
No,
got
when they moved back.
Yeah.
So I did that and passed the physical, and at that time I could choose what branch I wanted, and I took the Navy.
Oh, okay. And so then you had to report to where?
Up to the Great Lakes Naval Training School up in above Chicago there.
Uh-huh. That's where you did your boot camp?
Yes, did
And
my
that's-
boot camp.
That's a picture down there of you in boot camp, right?
You're right.
All right.
Yeah, I was a boot camp petty officer there during the boot training, and I had stripes to show it. We had a change in the officer or the seaman that was having us go through the different drills and everything that they needed, and his name was Era Parsegian.
Really?
Now, Era was a native of Akron.
Oh.
And he and his older brother went to school with me at Akron U. So he showed up at boot camp because Paul Brown was running the football team that they had for games in the fall of the year. They had. When I went through boot camp, there was all the baseball players were showing up on the being drafted into the Great Lakes team,
Okay.
and that's the way they ran their athletics.
Now that was you. That was in January of '44,
Yes.
and then you had. Tell me a little bit about boot training. What did that consist of? What did you do?
Oh, it consisted of marching, all the regular marching.
Marching, physical exercise and stuff.
Exercises. We had to line up with another company in height, and we had to put on the boxing gloves and have boxing matches that day.
Oh.
Just all kinds of activities like that, marches and so on.
And that went on until about March then, right?
Yes.
And then you got a leave, did you?
We got a boot leave for
Okay.
one week.
I see.
And
What'd you do on that?
I went back home and got engaged to my wife.
You did?
Yeah.
Well, how about that?
So,
Well, now, Charlotte, what did you think about this? This Navy guy coming home, and you had met him before.
Oh,
Tell me
yes.
about when you had met him.
I met him at Goodyear. I worked for Goodyear Tire and Rubber, and he was an engineer and the designer across the hall. I ran the blueprint machine, ran all the blueprints, made all the blueprints for the engineers.
He brought a lot of blueprints in, apparently.
Yes.
And did you bring more in than usual when he got to know you?
well, he hung out there a bit, but
Well, then we started dating.
yeah.
Must be she thought he was okay then.
Yeah.
Huh?
Well,
Was
we
it kind
had
of
a
love at
bet.
first? Was it
We
love
had
at
a
first
bet.
sight?
We had a bet.
Oh, you had a bet.
And the Cauca Falls and Akron, North Akron, was having a Pee-wee football game.
Yeah.
And I said, well, Akron or North Hill's going to win. And she said, oh, no, Fallsville. And so we bet.
Okay.
And the bet was a meal at Causey's restaurant downtown.
Well, how could you lose on that one?
Well, I lost.
Oh, you did.
We got married.
I think you won out pretty well.
Not till afterwards, though.
So, then you got engaged, and then you received a commission, right?
Yes.
As an ensign.
As an ensign.
I think we have some stripes, and we have some buttons and some things that we'll put on last, some awards that you got, and we'll show them at the end of our interview here.
All right.
Okay. And so now by this time we're getting into to June, and that's when you had a furlough on June 10th, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's when this marriage all happened.
Yes. Yeah, I came home. By then I had my uniform, and I came home in the morning to get, and we got married that day and went back to Chicago at Great Lakes because I was still had 3 more weeks, 2 or 3, before I would get some more orders to another facility, and so we stayed in New York or in Chicago and
Okay.
went to Berghoff's. They had the restaurant down in the in the basement, and an old German restaurant, and places and shows and things like that we could get tickets for.
That was kind of your honeymoon.
And that was our
That's
honeymoon.
right.
Now, did you have a place to stay? You had where'd you stay at a hotel,
Or the
or
hotel, yes.
and you could stay with her there then, or
Oh,
did
yeah.
you could? Okay.
Yeah.
You just had to report then to Duty?
Yeah, duty
Each
the
day.
next day.
okay. Now, Charlotte, what was your maiden name, Charlotte?
Simon, S-Y-M-O-N.
Simon.
Simon.
And did you
Scotch.
it was Scotch? All
My
right, so
grandmother
your family is Scottish. All right, and they came and they settled down there in
Youngstown.
in
Ohio.
Youngstown.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, now you know this is in June. It's getting to timeline again. It's getting about D-Day in the European theater.
Yes.
June 10th here, or June, and what was D-Day, Nick? What was the date for D-Day? Can you remember? In June?
June 6th,
June 6th,
1944.
1944. Okay, yeah. So it happened just before you got married. Then D-Day was what was in the papers and stuff at that time.
Yeah.
And so now you actually, when you graduated there, got your ensign commission and so on, then you were assigned to a different place to.
Well, we were supposed to be assigned to the boat cruise that they were getting down, assembling down at Fort Pierce, Florida.
Okay.
But they changed at the last day with it. We were there before shipping out,
Mhm.
they changed the orders, and we were assigned to ships because of the boat crews were available, all well seasoned over in Europe and in France, and they could take those people and send them to the Pacific for where they were needed, but we got the benefit of going with ships, and I got assigned to the USS New Hanover,
Yeah.
which was a AKA.
And I think just before that, didn't you get assigned to the to Princeton?
Well, yeah.
To-
We
at the end of
were
basic
at
training.
Princeton taking, we were 90-day wonders.
90 days.
90 days to make an ensign.
And that's the picture at the top of our paper there, Nick. We're all out in front of Princeton there. They're at his class there.
Yeah.
And I believe you're the third one in the middle row from the left there. The third fellow there, but that's the whole group.
Yeah.
So that took 90 days to become an officer.
Become a gentleman.
And a gentleman. Officer and a gentleman. Was he always a gentleman like that?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe he was. All right. So now, you like you just said, then it comes December, and you are assigned a ship, and it's called the USS Hanover, right?
Yeah, New Hanover.
New Hanover. That's
Oh,
right. Now that's that ship at the bottom there, Nick. If you can get that, about the best picture we got of it. But can you tell us a little bit about that ship?
Well, it was had a C3 hull cargo ship.
Mm-hmm.
It was about 650 feet long and stem to stern, and about 65 feet wide. And it was built for cargo. Some of the area, of course, we had to have the quarters for the crew and all the laundry and all that kind
Sure.
of stuff that goes with a ship, and along with the mess hall and so on. It had 5 holds with 3 decks below the main deck
Okay.
in there, and it had armament of I think 6 Bofor gun mounts, and as well as a 5-inch 5-inch gun on the fantail, and then a lot of there was some more smaller guns on besides the 20 millimeter guns on the
They would be used for what? Any
and
aircraft?
the aircraft.
Yeah.
Oh.
So now, Charlotte, he's got assigned to this ship, and you were in Chicago. Now you where did you go then? Did you come back home, or what happened?
I went back home.
To your mother and dad's
Went to work.
I went to work at Goodyear.
again? Uh-huh. Right. So that's what a lot of the wives did that were husbands were sent out. They went back to the family again, and
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
they? A lot of the people at that time. So now, where did you get this ship? What city or what?
We picked up the ship. They made the hull and the somewhere up around Norfolk.
Okay.
But they took it down from there to the Charleston Navy Yard to get outfitted for all of the guns and the paraphernalia that needed to be like the ammunition conveyor and all that to
Yeah, that was kind of up here on the East Coast here,
yeah.
or Norfolk. That's where you got it. Okay.
They took it down to Charleston.
Charleston,
then
yeah.
to a Navy Yard, and then when we got the ready for commissioning and going to sea, why we went up to Chesapeake Bay for trials, and that took us up around Cape Hatteras, where we were.
Christmas time.
No, well, yeah, it was on New Year's Day.
New
New Year's Day.
Yeah,
You can kind of
we
follow
were
that.
coming up there, and we were rolling 30 degrees both ways.
Oh, because you were so light. You hadn't had any cargo.
There was nothing in the holds.
Oh.
And as a matter of fact, the first lieutenant, who is in charge of the hull, and I was his assistant, we were back in the back end of the hold when, or one of the holds, looking at some damage control steel that was back in there, and whether there was any damage being done, and it was all right when we got the word that the up in the front number 2 hold, the Jeep had gotten loose.
Oh, okay.
And we went back through the galley on the main deck to go down into number 2 hold when they were preparing a lunch for the crew, and they were going to have chicken, fried chicken, and the galley was a mess, the flour and everything, but we didn't have time. We went on down there, and we got down into the hole. We found that the Jeep someone had lashed it to a big stanchion down in the hole that was the mast for the forward mast that the cranes on the ship were attached to, and whoever did it, I never knew, but the Jeep itself was a total wreck.
It was, you were shot by that time anyway.
On the wall about 4 or 5 feet up was a perfect input of the plant of the Jeep spare tire.
Or it had run against it.
And so we put it in a cargo net and set it ashore, because we also had the notice for an old nav teletype or whatever, saying that we should put those Jeeps ashore for whatever reason. They were taking them off the ship, and so we put it in a cargo and set it on the pier.
Don't know who got rid of it from there.
Yeah.
Then you went on in February, and you had there was a fire on board ship or something?
Well, yes, we'd been out on trials for the ship, and we came back to the pier, and a little while later we saw smoke coming out of number 2 hold.
Mm.
And what it was we found out, I found out when I went down the hold to look at about what was happening. We found that a whole pile of cargo nets were piled up, and they had
Spontaneous combustion, was it?
combustion of the cargo nets. It was they were smoldering down there, and we ended up then pouring enough water on it to put out the fire, or calm the pile of nets down anyway. And but we had a little list to the ship when we did that. Trying to pump the water out then.
All right. When you didn't sink the ship, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, now we're getting to late February. You've been out here, and you're ready to embark on a little trip.
Yes.
Oh,
We had orders to go out to the Pacific, and we went down the coast and through Cuba and Puerto Rico, I think it was, and into the Panama Canal, and then on out to Hawaii and Pearl Harbor.
Mm-hmm. When you got to Pearl Harbor, did you get off? Were you able to get off the ship?
Oh yeah.
And did you see much damage there that had been?
Well, yeah, we saw Battleship Row.
Yeah.
They were still, the ships were still down there, bubbling and out.
Oh, were they still bubbling then? Yeah.
Yeah.
They're still coming out of them.
Yeah.
See, that's 4 months later almost. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm. What did you pick up there? Did you take on the cargo there, or did you take on some jeeps or something like that, or
I'm
some army officers? And
trying to think, because it seemed like that somewhere we picked up some officers,
Mhm.
and we went on out to the Pacific there.
I think you was telling me the other day that you would kind of sail westward then,
Yeah,
and out there after you picked those guys up on your way to the Marshall Islands.
yeah, that's where we were going.
Mm-hmm. And what did you found something floating in the water alongside?
Oh,
there.
well, about the second day, why we got a call to go to general quarters, which is battle stations, and we found out that there was some object that came down out of the sky and landed on the ocean there. And the captain said that we should steam up to it and see what it was. And we did, and I had a crew that hooked onto it, and it was one of the paper balloons that the Japanese were bombing the West Coast with.
Oh. Now, did it have a bomb in it?
Yes, it was a brick, like a big paving brick of yellow material.
Huh.
And it had a whole ring of sandbags, and whenever the balloon got too low, instead of being up where the westerly winds blew, why it would drop a sandbag off of a little powder bit trigger or whatever,
Oh, okay.
and it would raise it up. Now, what happened, we don't know what it was, but I knew, and it had an aneroid on the mechanism to release the sandbag.
Sure.
To trigger the powder or whatever it was that dropped the sandbag, and we put it all into a big box and took it into the port, and that's port called in there, and but the gunner's mate, our gunner officer, and I had a discussion on how it was made and so on, and we went, took it in and gave it to someone in there, and I don't know where it went to from there then, but that was.
Weren't you a little bit worried about the bomb?
No, because it had was all wet.
I see.
And you could see that there was no danger there.
Okay.
But
They were dropping them to go to
And-
the West Coast?
yes, they were supposed to,
Yeah.
and about half a dozen or so made it
Did they?
all the way. Yeah, but no one ever heard about it until
Yeah.
long after the war. Yeah.
All right. Now you got past that, and you got to the Marshall Islands, and it looks like you had those jeeps and those officers to unload there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Then where did you go? To the south from there?
yeah, we started south down toward Eniwetok,
Mm-hmm.
and we laid over there. Where we were at Guadalcanal, we had a stay there where we had time to do things like test out our diving gear and that we had on board, and things like that, and get a little liberty and rest, and before then we went south.
You actually got off on Guadalcanal?
Oh yeah.
Did you
Yeah.
see any of the people that were on Guadalcanal, or wasn't there anybody
Well,
there?
there was I saw some people I didn't know.
But not
we
names.
were on the beach, or we were testing out. It was a helmet, and it had a pump that you could pump air down into this helmet that's put over your head,
Uh-huh.
and had some weight on it.
I see.
And so we wanted to know how it felt and so on with the first lieutenant and I did, and so but there was some wrecks of ships up on the coast yet, and we.
So you got through the Solomon Islands then, and now you crossed the equator.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
we had old King Neptune pay us a visit.
Did you?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And we had a merry party.
Did you? Okay. And what was that all about?
Well, that was the initiation of the going over the equator.
Uh-huh.
And
So you became a
a shellback.
shellback.
Right.
He was in the order of the shellbacks, huh?
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty impressive right there.
Yeah.
Now, you went on then, following from the equator on, you went to southward again to New Caledonia?
Yes.
And what was your reason
well,
for
we
going
went
there?
to and we talked, and then we
Mhm.
got orders to go down to New Caledonia, and they had a ship had a broken rudder, and they were doing was getting ready to invade Okinawa. So we took the part of the ship that had the broken rudder, and we were the last to be loaded and get ready. But the flotilla carried about 16 ships of soldiers,
Okay.
the army,
Uh-huh.
and I think we were. They had the APA, which is auxiliary personnel ships, and then there was another 6 AKA that carried cargo. I think we had 1 or 2 holds of juice.
Juice.
Yeah, pineapple.
Oh, really?
That type of juice, and taken up there, and all kinds of other. We had an airplane on ship on the deck, a small scout plane, and we had about 6 or 8 men that were with the Signal Corps that came along. We had a hard time getting them off the ship, but so we had a bunch of the remnants of the cargo that they had, and we took off for them to Okinawa on the second wave.
Second wave of ships that went in
Yeah.
there. Oh.
At the time that we arrived at Okinawa, there must have been 1,000 ships in Buckner Bay on the west side of Okinawa,
Wow.
and they had all secured the island except one little point up at the very tip, north tip of the island, and then a ring around Naha, the capital. And the battle was going on at Naha. They had about 5 or 6 battleships. We had to put a boat in the water with 2 men with rifles and so forth, and also a spoke generator. They used oil to make fog
Okay.
to cover any of the area in case they get an air raid, and they had to have the rifles for suicide bombers swimming out to the ships.
Oh my gosh, they would be loaded with explosives, huh?
Explosives, yeah. Yeah, that was going on too.
We didn't ever hear much about that, you know. At all.
We pulled into the area of Caramoredo, which was a little atoll there off from Okinawa, and there was just nothing but wrecked
It's a graveyard of ships, huh?
It was a graveyard of ships
Wow.
in there till they got rid of them or did something for them.
Now that, I believe you told me that was Easter Sunday, right?
Yeah, Easter Sunday.
And did you ever run into any kamikaze pilots?
Yeah, yeah. We we got the call for general quarter, and the next thing I know, well, I looked out the portal or something. I managed to see these 6 Marine fighters that were chasing a Japanese fighter plane, and they were above him, and they were driving him down into the bay.
Oh.
The whole area turned their guns up and fired away, and the Marines got out of the way, and it hit the water, maybe 300 or 400 yards from a ship. Maybe not that close, or maybe closer, and rolled and went into flames and didn't do any damage. So
Close enough.
that was enough.
Yes.
And we had a Marine on board that he was signed to. He had seen a bit of a war, and he was, in one sense, on recreation on the ship, but he was to coordinate the land, the material going on shore as to what was needed. And he was up on the deck, main deck, when he saw the planes. And I always said that he came down into damage control room where we were, and I always said that if he had a fresh spade, he would have dug a foxhole in the deck because he was so excited about that plane coming in like that.
He'd seen what had happened, hadn't he?
Oh yes.
Yeah. Well, now we're into mid-May, and you're going to head towards Saipan.
Yeah.
I believe eastward, going eastward now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Well, we had 8 of the LCM, which is landing craft medium,
Okay.
and we had 16 of LCVPs, which is personnel landing craft,
Okay.
and they're the smallest one. Ones on board, and so we were to put them off at Saipan, and then we were going to the west coast, and we could pick up another load of boats to bring back to the Pacific.
I see. Now in Saipan, I believe you tell me you had a meeting with someone.
Well, yes, my brother.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Way over there in the world.
He had been drafted into the Army Air Corps.
Which was his name now? Which one?
Walter.
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 The youngest one.
Yeah, he was the youngest. My older brother. My older brother was with he went to Fort Riley at the officer training school, and then he stayed there and taught for a while, and he ended up on General Stilwell's office in Washington.
Oh,
So he never got out of the country, but go back to
Walter.
Walter. He got the job of going over a B-52 with the gun patrol to check out everything before the plane would go on another
Mission, huh?
mission.
Okay.
Yes,
Mhm.
and that was his job. And so we had a good chat.
Well, he come on board.
Yes,
Yeah.
he did. And
Did you get?
and I went around to see him, and then he came on board.
Okay. So in Saipan, did you meet any natives or any of the people of Saipan?
No, we were on the base.
On the base.
Or I mean, I got the jeep and then went on to the base where he was.
So now you had a conversation and an old time with your brother, and you June and July, it took about 2 months there that you went to San Francisco.
Right, all the way.
Wow. Yeah.
And because I had a reason.
You had a reason. How come you got to San Francisco? What happened?
Well, my wife had given birth to a baby boy.
Okay.
So,
Well, the timing was pretty
Our
good.
son.
Yeah.
our son, yeah.
What? Yeah. So
Yeah.
but put that in there. Get that straight, huh?
And so I had to run off to
I like
the
that.
local shop and get a couple of suits for him.
I see.
When we hit the port.
And what did you name this baby boy?
Robert David.
Robert David. All right.
Robert for his father and David for my dad's name.
That's neat. And he was born on what was his birth date?
First of July.
1st of July.
Yeah.
Okay. That would have been in 45? 44, yeah.
Yeah.
1944.
Yeah.
So, okay. So did you in San Francisco then, did you get to come home to see him?
Yes.
Yeah.
Took 2 days to come home. 2 days took all my leave.
Traveling across
Traveling.
the country. You got all the way across from San Francisco, all the way across to
To Ohio.
Ohio.
Yeah, and back again.
But you was home for a couple of days. That was pretty neat, huh? I bet you were pretty excited.
Yes, really.
Yeah. Probably hard to send him back again, wasn't it?
Yeah.
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 So, anyways, so when you got back then from your furlough, you had to load the ship, or the ship was loaded up again then, or was it ready
Yeah.
to go, and what
Yeah.
did you carry back?
We carried back a whole carload or a whole shipload of fog oil, and we topped it off with some because of the weight of the oil, they had room for some bulk, and they had Quonset huts
Okay.
for that. And there's a mark on the side of the ship called the Plimsoll mark,
Okay.
and it was right to the Plimsoll mark on the ship, but it was loaded as much
As you could carry, huh?
Yeah.
And this fog oil, you had told me once before about it. Do you think that's what they made a fog and
Yes.
to cover the ships so people couldn't,
Yeah.
planes couldn't see them and so on if they
Yeah.
wanted to.
you just covered the whole area,
Wow.
and it would be up so high. I mean, it was just like fog.
Yeah.
You know?
Uh-huh. So that was it was an integral part of the defense and of
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It
convoy or
Yeah, we used it up at Okinawa. Why sometimes I've seen a couple of times we used it because there was rumors that they might come on down.
Okay. Yeah. Well, now this is in August, and on August 14th, Japan surrendered.
Yes,
Okay, you want to tell us what that was like on the ship?
it was mayhem. If you've ever seen Mr. Roberts' show
Oh,
where they pick up the crew or the those inebriated sailors and the cargo net on board.
oh my gosh!
Yeah, so that's where it was.
They're really partying. Huh?
Yeah, and matter of fact, that we had a real salty Closens made first
Okay.
class,
Mm-hmm.
or what cheap he was, and he came back after a little stay on shore. He came back and he says, "I don't want any part of it."
Oh, it was too much for him.
I mean, it was too much for him, and I mean, he was a real old soul.
And it was really celebrating.
Yeah.
Well, so then you sailed on back to the Philippines
Yes,
and to Luzon.
Luzon. Yes, and it was on up at Baguio, which is the summer capital of the Philippines, and we were up there picking up a load of medical supplies
Uh-huh.
that they had put in there, and they were to have been for the invasion of Japan, but they were shipping them up there because they needed the supplies, for the people and so on. They needed the medical supplies. And we took them up to Sasebo, Japan. And that was a place where you came up to the island of Kyushu, and you came up and you could just see the hills of the island, but there was no city or anything like that. And what you had to do was sail into the passageway, and it went diagonally through the inlet, such that you couldn't see it from the outside. But you got into this harbor, and it was a great, a good-sized harbor where we saw what some real queer sights of them loading the ships that they were going to with coal, and they had a whole group of the coolies or the workers
Old people just
come up the gangplank with a basket of coal and dump into the ship.
oh my goodness.
And that's how they were trying to fight the war.
Wow.
They don't have any oil. That was the reason for going down to the the Indonesia area was to get some oil.
I see.
And so yes, they were loading the ship with oil, with that, and they were building 2 ships on can't think of what you call where they build up the ship on the scaffolding, I mean.
Oh, okay.
Dry dock.
They were building.
Dry dock?
Dry dock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
They were, there was a couple of dry docks there where they were building ships. It was a huge harbor there. And the town itself, there was no town because the only building standing was a building about 3 stories high, and it wouldn't be any bigger than this house. And that was the only building, a brick building. And that survived the bombing of about 6 to 8 B-52s that went over and dropped fire bombs on the town. And there was another house there. And then they dropped the 2 of the atomic bombs on Japan.
Yeah.
You can imagine why they surrendered.
Yeah, they see that there was no, that's
There
right,
was-
this
there was
anymore.
no- yeah.
So, anyway, you were there, and now you pick up a bunch of Japanese war material?
Yes, tanks. Our crews had a fun driving the tanks around in the hull.
In the hull of the
To
ship?
Get them in place.
I don't know that I let them Navy guys do that or not.
And every
Give them a paddle.
every fellow that came into the service there,
Uh-huh.
they got a Japanese rifle
Oh,
and a bayonet.
is that right?
Yeah.
Did you get one?
I had one, but when we had our garage sale, I sold.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
Oh.
I finally sold
up
it.
here.
When we moved up here. Yeah.
Because I was going to ask you
And,
if you had that.
but I did at that time. I brought home a little gasoline engine. I don't know what I was going to do with it, but anyway, I was going to use it for something.
Uh-huh.
And but I never did. It finally rusted up enough to junk it.
Uh-huh. All right, so now you're loaded up with these extra war materials that were left over and
Yes.
so on, and you made your way home?
Yeah, we came back by way of to Honolulu and then on down through the
Panama Canal?
Panama Canal and up the coast to Indian Head, Maryland, where there was an Army facility for that type of materials. They were interested in what they had.
Oh, yeah.
And I left the ship because they had to cut down on the crew,
Okay.
and my name came up,
Good time to get off, huh?
and
You traveled enough.
I had traveled enough, and when I got back to, I had to go up to Great Lakes, and when I got back to Great Lakes, they said that because I only had a couple of points that required to get out of the service,
Oh.
they discharged me then,
Oh.
and I come home.
Now, just before you got discharged, you got promoted, I believe.
Yeah,
Right.
oh, yeah. Yeah,
So
that
your highest rank then was what?
Lieutenant JG, which is junior grade.
Uh-huh.
And we knew we were coming home, you know,
Uh-huh.
and so we got all of our spirits together in one of the staterooms in Panama,
Uh-huh.
and we didn't want to. We didn't want to save them any longer. So
Used them for good use, huh?
we had a party. We had a party. One of the fellows was using coffee cups for a bowling alley
Oh.
and things like that in the passageway. And there was a fellow by the name of Hytz, Hycz.
Uh-huh.
Was it Polish? He and I had to go over to the dentist to give our teeth checked
Oh.
the next morning.
Oh.
And I don't know what he thought, but but I didn't ask.
He knew you'd been partying a bit.
We had been partying.
You didn't
So-
eat Novocaine.
You were discharged then on the 3rd of March,
Yeah,
1946.
right.
And but you were discharged into actually to reserve, I believe.
Yeah,
Is that
right.
right?
I was made into inactive reserve, and when the Korean War came on, the first thing they did was get a bunch of the reserve and get it into call up for duty.
Uh-huh.
And but there was a bunch of us, like I had a family now, and I was also
Age.
older and everything, and so they discharged me as being overage in rank, and I got taken out of the reserve.
Uh-huh. He has a little card down there, and that's on his reserves, inactive reserve. And after that, then in April the 15th, 1954,
Yeah,
I believe that's his actual honorable discharge that he got from the United States Navy.
Yeah.
But that was 10 years later
yes.
than from the time he went in. So maybe a little longer, but approximately 10 years he served.
We had a reserve unit in Akron, Ohio, out in the Goodyear aircraft hangar, and they had weekly meetings out there, and then they were using the area for training the troops in that unit.
Uh-huh.
And I had a chance to go through there once, and they were training the recruits, and there was one fellow that was chewing out another fellow for doing something, and they had the conversation of nose to nose.
Okay.
And I said, this is why I never went into the reserve
Oh.
when I came home.
Well, now that you've had your service and put your service time in, and you got to get back into civilian life again.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so you came home to Charlotte,
Yeah.
and now what did you do for a place to live?
Well, we bought an old house on 2nd Street in Colga Falls and settled down to regular civilian life.
That was about
But,
1946.
we ended up, though, with having twin daughters
Okay.
shortly thereafter. And as the baby boomers of those years,
Sure.
and one of them is up here in the Ada area of Michigan, and the other one is down by Plymouth, Canton Township, by Plymouth, Michigan.
Mhm.
And so we chose to come into this area as opposed to Detroit.
Nice. Now, you got a job then after you got home, or did you? How did you went back to where you were working, or did you?
Oh, I was at Goodyear, and they had to take me back, but they didn't have anything in engineering at that particular time to give me anything, so they put me back on what was called the squadron, this was it paid you with a low salary. It wasn't really a
Kind of a stipend.
stipend that, I still had another year or something on the squadron, and unless I got a position, and so I heard of my two brothers that was working for Firestone. The one told me about a job that was open over there, and so I switched rubber companies
I see.
and put in about 34 years of at Firestone.
Mhm.
One which was stint in the Cyberlink Tire and Rubber Company, which I was a plant engineer for 2 years there to help rebuild that facility, and then I worked in all plant projects.
Yeah.
Otherwise.
Now I think you went to Iowa for a little stint time there.
Yes, they needed someone in the engineering department because a fellow engineer there was going to Portugal to build a plant over in Portugal, and I was to take his place, and we were there 6 years. Over the last 2 of them, I was the plant engineer then, and then I got called back to the home office to do all plant projects, and that's how we come back into Ohio again.
So you had a new house over there, or bought a different house over in Iowa, and you
Yeah.
had one back in Akron,
And,
and then you come back to Akron again.
and one that was sold on a land contract, and it went bad too. So I had 3 houses. We had 3 houses.
Oh, one time.
At one time. So
So that kind of kept you moving there with, and
Yeah.
in the meantime, of course, by now, 1965, the kids are have actually about ready to leave home, aren't they? 20 some or
well, yes.
22, 23 years old.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bob was going, well, he had 2 or 3 places he was going to, and then he found, talked to a fellow that was recruiting students for Cornell College at Mount Vernon, Iowa.
Mm.
And he decided that that's where he wanted to go. And so he ended up going to Mount Vernon, Iowa, Cornell. And when it came time for the girls, they went there too. So
Now, Charlotte, you had these twin daughters, and tell me about their names and where they went and what they did. Okay.
Well, we named them Jane Ann and Jean Louise, and Jane Ann was the first one.
Okay.
And we had a lively home.
I'll bet you did. Yeah.
But it was wonderful. We really enjoyed all 3 of the children. They were good students and excelled. The girls were synchronized swimmers, and we enjoyed that, taking them all over with that. And then what happened next?
Did Jean? What did she end up doing?
Oh, they went to college at Cornell, and Jean is a school teacher,
Okay.
and Jane is a school secretary.
And she works here over at right close by here,
Yes,
right? At Ada Elementary.
Ada,
And what's her last name now?
Varda.
Varda.
She's married to Daryl Varda. He's a medical doctor here in
Grand Rapids.
Grand Rapids.
Uh-huh. And now, tell me about your grandkids. I'm sure you
Well,
want to tell me about your grandkids.
They have 2 daughters.
that's
Jean has 2
Jean.
daughters.
Oh,
Jean
Jean and Ed have 2 daughters, Pamela and Susan, and Pamela both are married, and Pamela has 2 children.
Oh,
But
Grand-
Susan,
great-grand.
so you got some
Susan
great
just
grandkids.
decided she
Yeah.
wanted to be an aunt.
I see.
She didn't want, and she likes cats.
Oh,
And she's married. She's
Oh,
married too.
in New Zealand.
No,
Oh. Who?
what did I say? Who did I say?
Oh. I don't.
Jean, well, we're talking about Jean, and she has
Jean,
children.
yeah, with 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you got Jane,
And
and she has some a couple boys and a
yeah,
girl.
she has 2 boys and a girl, and they are all out in the West. Kate is a doctor out in Seattle,
Okay.
and Andy and Dan are in
Andy's in Bozeman,
Bozeman, Montana.
and he does construction work.
Okay.
and Dan is he's a teacher.
All right. Well, you've raised quite a family here, and
Yes,
they're all
we're very
doing
proud
well.
of them.
it's been great.
All good students and always.
Now, since you retired, you had a couple hobbies. I understand. There's some
Oh yeah,
gardening and so on.
gardening back home. In there, we had a garden that was 90 feet long because that was the width of the lot, and about 18 feet deep. And I had a set of some raspberries that purple raspberries
Oh,
that I don't know of anyone that had anything like that,
Purple ones, no.
purple, and it was sweet, and it was from an old stallion that my mother and dad put in on Fair Street,
Oh.
and I turned it in, gave some to the Worcester branch of the Ohio Agricultural
Ohio State.
State to play with,
Oh.
and he came back for some more
Well, they must like them, all right.
because they were like a black strain, because insofar as the pain would put would put out a long cane,
Yeah.
and then it would take root. Now that's the way blackberries are, and the
I
black
see.
that
I see.
the red raspberries, they come from go through the roots, and comes up
Straight,
as that, and they propagate that way.
Mhm.
So I don't know what the fella did down at Worcester, Ohio, where they had the ag center, but I've always had the raspberries until I came up here,
Mhm.
and I left them. I passed out some more samples of the canes, and
I don't know why we didn't bring some.
I don't know either, but
Well, we didn't have this house
Yeah.
when it came up.
And then you also had another little hobby of making some little toys and little Santa Clauses and so on.
Yeah,
And I think that you told me this was your favorite one, right?
Well, yes. Yeah.
that's a
Can you get
skier.
a shot of that? That Santa? He makes those
I
Santas.
saw this
and carves them.
picture of this in the American Home magazine, and it was sitting on a table in a living room. And I said, "Oh, Bob, look at that. Do you think you could make that?" And he says, "Sure." So we boiled the wood, the sticks, and formed the skis. And this is all one piece. This
Basket.
Now the other one, you added the
Well, I got
Got
all
another one back here. I'll bring it out here.
yeah,
This is the one that has a little lantern
yes.
carries
uh-huh,
too.
yeah.
yeah, but that,
Yeah.
that has the basket glued onto it.
Huh?
But the base is part of the
But we boiled these skis in the pan on the stove.
They're very fine, beautiful workmanship and
Well,
wood.
all the Santa Clauses,
Now you can pan around a little bit. You'll see
Yeah.
a whole bunch of things up there, Nick.
and he
I
made
don't know whether
these
you can get those
boxes,
or not, but
Christmas boxes.
there's
And
some
of course
Santa
the
Clauses
kids
over
got
there, and there's a whole bunch up here on the top,
Yeah.
up there, all around on their decorations here.
Uh,
So
some reindeer copied from Neiman Marcus catalog.
just gonna pass them on around, and way over on the far side, you'll find some
And then
reindeer up there.
The creche, made the creches.
Yeah,
No more though, he doesn't have
not yet.
the use of his hand now.
Well, that's for right now, and he's. We might mention that that Bob had a stroke about a year ago, and but he's coming along real well. He's doing a lot of therapy and working on that, and just like Grandma did. And I told him about Grandma and how well she's come back and how he can do it too. But those little reindeer, he made of those up there too. So he's been his engineering skills have still been going on
Yes.
Yeah.
all of his life.
Lots of things.
That was kind of neat. So, anyways, we'll.
Made toys for the kids, the girls. They each got doll cradles for
Cradles and that
Christmas.
for the grandchildren.
And they
Oh, yeah.
went to school and they made little clothes cupboards for them, you know. So
Yeah.
they were in first grade,
Oh,
and
okay.
they went to
Sure,
school
yeah.
and they had to get up and say what they got for Christmas. And they said, well, they had Santa Claus brought them doll cradles and shitter ropes.
All right.
Yeah.
We were a good friend of the teacher, and she came and she just howled. She
Yeah, that
said,
box there is another of his
Yeah.
creations.
Yeah, that's a,
want some
Painted.
chocolates?
We'll,
Oh, yeah.
we'll candy. We'll get
Yeah.
some.
Sure.
anyway, I took the course. I always got an A in art, and so I took a course in toll painting because I was making the Santa Clauses and I needed some paint to paint them, and I went down to the shop in
This gift
Wadsworth, gift shop in Wadsworth, and get the paint, and she signed me up for a toll course. And so I did some
And,
toll
well,
painting.
and she
for a while.
had at Christmas time, she had the shop decorated, and this one year where she had this wooden Santa Claus sitting up on a shelf, you know. And we were in there, and he picked it up and was looking at it. And the owner, which we knew quite well, she says, well, you know, that's for sale, you could buy it. And he says, oh, yes, he says, I know, but he says, I'm going to make it. Well, the next Christmas, she came to the house
She wanted,
to see his
To see
Santa
it, huh?
Clauses.
yeah, she wanted to make me make her some Santa.
I
Santa Clauses
see.
for the shop. He
Yeah.
said, no.
That was this. Well, I'll tell you, it's been a great pleasure today to
Yeah.
be talking with you folks,
Well,
and
thank you.
Charlotte, you and Bob, on behalf of the Lowell Area Historical Museum, and Nick and I,
Yes.
we want to thank you so much for sharing this day with
Well,
us.
Well, we
we
appreciate
appreciate
it.
And Bob, I want to thank you so very much for your service to our country,
Thank you.
because it's guys like you that have made it possible for all of us to have our businesses and raise our families
Yeah.
under a blanket of freedom.
Thank
Thank you very, very much.
The following Oral Military History Project is a series of documentaries in association with the Lowell area men and women who proudly served and sacrificed part of their lives to preserve the opportunities for all of us to build our businesses and raise our families under a blanket of freedom. For reservations and more information, contact the Lowell Area Historical Museum at 616-897-7688.